Hi and welcome to Fork in the Road. My name is Matthew Tate. This is your channel for transformation. Today I'm continuing my adoption series for all adoptees and anyone in the adoption triad, adoption constellation as they call it. Birth mothers, birth families, natural families, and adoptive mothers, adoptive families. But I'm an adoptee, so hence I'm continuing this as from an adoptee's perspective. Today is a book review. A book review for this book here, The Lost Child of Philomena. The more recent additions to this is a yellow cover with Philomena sitting next to a man who, when I first looked at it, I thought it was actually her son, but it wasn't. It was the author, the reporter who she tells her story to. So Philomena is a fascinating read. It takes you on a journey of a lady by the name of Philomena, an Irish girl who falls pregnant. She falls pregnant at the age of, I think it was 18, and as a young girl in Ireland, pregnant, single, the father nowhere to be found, she finds herself on a journey. She is sent off to a nunnery to have the baby because in Irish society in the 1950s, when this when this book is set, in the 1950s it was unacceptable to be pregnant out of wedlock. In a very strong Catholic community, it was unacceptable. And so she is bundled off and taken to a nunnery to be hidden away from society. So there are all sorts of layers of shame and guilt. She's lost her family. For 18 years she had a family, and now she is taken away from her father and all of her brothers. Her mother had passed away when she was young, so she had no support except for the nuns. Nowhere else to go because nobody else would accept her. And so she is lost and has to go off to this nunnery. So it's a harrowing story because she has her baby, whose name was Anthony. And this baby is kept with her. She mothers this baby whilst being effectively slave labor for the nuns for those 3 years to pay for her keep. So it's a story where she builds up this relationship with the baby. That 3 years she's with the baby in the convent under the house rules of the nuns. And then the baby is taken away from her and taken away to an American family. Now that's another story within the story. And as I was listening to the first part of this story, my takeaway was, first, why am I listening to all of this stuff about the Catholic Church and all of the things that go into it? They go into the politics in behind it and the power of the church. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I listening to this? And then it hit me. That is part of the reason I was adopted. Now, I wasn't born in Ireland. I was born in Bendigo in Australia. But as I was born in Bendigo, it was a religious overlay. It was the religious overtones from the 1950s that projected through to 1974 when I was born. That meant that I could not stay with my family. I had to be bundled off and sent somewhere else. And so this religious overtone actually is the structure that was in behind the reason why I was adopted. So, of course, this is exactly to do with my story. I was actually looking for books I could listen to online on Audible, and Philomena wouldn't have been my first choice, but it was suggested to me by, I went on a course for people looking to counsel people in adoption, counsellors, social workers, and the like. And of course, this one jumped out as, it's an audible book, an audio book, and of course, it's nailed me against the wall. It's exactly to do with my adoption story. The reason I was adopted was because of a church overlay. And so this explained the structure that is in behind why I was adopted in the first place. So the story goes on, and it goes on to the American family after this. And the American family, and there he is, young Anthony, with his little toy plane and his it's not his sister. It's actually a girl that was the lady who adopted him was actually looking for a girl. But these two were thick as thieves, and she saw the relationship they had with each other in the orphanage, or not orphanage, in the nursery, because the mothers were still there. And when she went in to get this little girl and took him with her. So it's like those moments of chance are incredibly powerful. So those moments of chance meant that these two children were sent off together to America. And then eventually, over time, these children grow up in a family with three natural brothers, 3 natural boys to these parents, and then these 2 adoptive children. It was the lady who took him in was married to a doctor. They had a good life. They had a great life in America. And so the rest of the book takes you through the life of Anthony, whose name was changed to Michael. Michael Hess is the name of the main character in the book, or the name boy, but it was actually a real boy, Michael Hess. So the premise of the book is that Philomena is looking for her son. That's how it was entitled at the start. And so the daughter of Philomena, a lady who she had later on, this daughter approached a journalist. And so Martin Sixsmith, they see him there on the cover. Martin Sixsmith is the journalist who was a political reporter who went on this journey of finding Michael Hess, aka Anthony. And so hence the book. So what's interesting is they then take you on the journey of Anthony/Michael and how he grows up with the adoptive family, and then moves into his life as a political administrator, I guess you could call him, within the Republican Party eventually. And on top of that, they follow his life as a gay man in Washington. Now what's interesting is there's some stuff in those stories which are really useful for all adoptees, in that it shows you how he wasn't following his authentic self because he hated the Republican Party, and yet he ended up in it up to his eyeballs, to the point where he was reporting directly to Ronald Reagan, the president at the time in the 80s. And so he was a fascinating character because he ended up being part of a party that actually discriminated against gay people. Now, I know nothing about American politics. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. This is what's in the book. But the Republican Party was actually looking to make laws against gay people, and this guy, Michael Hess, Anthony, was in the Republican Party. Even as a young man, he hated the Republican Party, but because of opportunity, he ended up inside the party. So it's very interesting how we don't live our authentic self, as Michael Hess/Anthony was not. It also goes through his life as a gay man, having to hide away because of society. If you're a gay person, it certainly shows you how far we've come. No doubt there's more to be done to get equality for gay people, but this is a great book for if you're wanting that kind of a story to understand the sort of pressures that were on gay people in the 1990s. The book continues on towards the end. Unfortunately, young Michael Hess, well, I won't give up the end of the book, but it doesn't end all that well for him, and he ends up passing away. And I won't give away too much on that, but he passes away, and he'd actually gone back to the same place where he and his mother were together. He couldn't remember his mother as a 3 or 4-year-old boy, but he was in there looking for his mother because he wanted answers. He knew he was adopted, and he wanted answers. So it's a really good book. It does bring up stuff within the adoptee, and as he goes searching for his mother, he went back to, I think it was called Roth's Cray convent. He went back there 3 times looking for answers, and each time the nuns sent him away with no information. Were very nice to him, but sent him away. And so as they sent him away, he went away empty-handed and never really found Philomena, his mother, who he was searching for. Meanwhile, at the same time, Philomena was also looking for her son. And Philomena, who's now she would have been at that time towards the end of the book in her 50s or maybe 60s, and she's looking for her son, looking for answers. And it was her daughter who, one day when she'd had a few too many sherries on Christmas Day, she spilt the beans, and that's why the daughter went, Jane I think her name was, went hunting for this young boy. So there he is, there's Anthony Lee / Michael Hess. So a really interesting book, there's a lot of different layers in there. Now at the end of the book, they don't actually find each other, but Michael's remains were taken to the same cemetery, into the cemetery of the nuns, where he was brought up in those first 3 years of life. So it's a really interesting book in that journey it takes you on, and some of the lessons for every adoptee in there. So what are the things I got out of this book? Well, what is the reasons why we're given up sometimes in adoption? For me, it was to do with my birth mother's story around the society she lived in could not accept a single mother. And the pressure was to hide her away and not give the option of having a single mother in the household. And hence adoption was seen as the only option in the parents and the grandparents who were all brought up in that 1950s mentality, even as far advanced as into 1974. So that's what I get out of this book, is that, okay, that's the structure behind why I was adopted in the first place. As you move through the book, you can see themes as young Anthony Lee / Michael Hess is growing up, where he's not being his authentic self by going into the Republican Party. He hated the Republican Party. He was more a Democrat, and yet he went in there and ended up being at the highest levels of power. Furthermore, you go into the book further, and there's a whole range of small things like that, where they talk about how he was inside a party that was not going to ever support him. So are these things subconsciously coming through, that we're not enough and that we have to take what we get as adoptees? These are all good questions that come up. And then towards the end of the book, probably my only disappointment was they didn't develop the story of Philomena, the mother, searching for the son. It was quite light on. I thought, wow, we could have spent half the book talking about Philomena, the mother, looking for the son. We spent all the time with Anthony, or Michael Hess, but we didn't spend any time with Philomena looking for the son, which is something as an adoptee I would have been interested in all of her thoughts, feelings, perspectives. Now, I have not watched the movie, but I get the feeling from reading the reviews of the movie's all about the mother forming the relationship with the reporter who writes the book and telling the story and everything in behind that. Now, that's what I think that the book should have done a little bit more focusing on, because it's called, if you look at the later books, the yellow cover, the Philomena that's the title, Philomena. Now, Philomena is the mother's name. I want to hear more about the mother. Okay, calm down, Matt. It's okay. But that was my only disappointment with the book. There's a lot in there. It's a useful read. If you know your story and it was the church who sent you away via social pressure on your mother, this is a good book for you. Especially the first quarter or so. It's all about the church. So this is Philomena, written by Martin Sixsmith. A good read, an interesting read. If you're a gay person, it's a good read for you too, because it shows you where things were at in the 1980s and 1990s, a long way behind where we are today. If you are looking for thoughts on, developing the vocabulary around what's inside your story, this is a great book for you. My name's Matthew Tate. This is Fork in the Road, continuing my adoption series. I'll see you next time.